Just a word of warning to the people sitting in the first two rows. I am about to Creed 2 all over myself. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hey everybody, Andrew Fantasia here. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome to Thumb Together. Today we're going to be talking about Creed 2 together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Otherwise, I might have to take up boxing as a second job to pay the bills. And if this face gets boxed, this face is all I got. If I lose this, that's it. We might as well just pack it in and call it a day. So subscribe. Do us all that favor. The Rocky franchise is one of my favorite movie franchises in existence. And the thing about the Rocky movies that I like is it's not about the fights. It's about the fighters. And yes, some of those fights are pretty damn nice too, but the fighters are the focus of the story. This whole franchise is essentially a soap opera that happens to have some boxing in it. And if you share that sentiment, if you look at these movies in that same way as I do, you're going to like Creed 2. However, if you just want to see really, really good boxing, you might be better off sticking with Creed 1. But let's take a bite out of this juicy peach and get into some more detail here. It's a little bit tricky to talk about the plot of Creed 2 without spoiling the plot of Creed 1 and the plot of Rocky 4. So if you really, really don't want to know how Creed 1 and Rocky 4 end, do yourself a favor, baby. Watch those movies first, then you can come back here and we can talk. But if you're cool with knowing, that's good, because I'm about to start running my mouth and giving away some plot details here. So in Rocky 4, Rocky beats Ivan Drago and takes revenge for the death of Apollo Creed. And in Creed 1, Adonis Creed finds out he's Apollo Creed's long-lost son, and he lives up to the legacy of his father and becomes a boxer and sort of makes peace with the fact that he is in fact a Creed. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and I can't say enough good things about Creed 1. So at the very beginning of the film in Creed 2, Adonis Creed is now the heavyweight champion of the world. And that's where problems start to happen. Because when you're at the top, there's only one place to go from there. And demons from the past start coming out of the woodwork to throw a wrench into his perfect little life. And those demons from the past come in the form of the Drago boys. And yes, Dolph Lundgren is back as Ivan Drago. And for me personally, this is where Creed 2 shines the brightest. The Rocky franchise has always been very good at making us like the bad guys. Sympathetic villains are kind of a staple of this whole series. And the villains in Creed 2, the Drago boys, they really come into their own in that respect. I would go so far as to argue that despite the fact that Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson and Sylvester Stallone all give amazing performances because all three of them are talented as hell, I would argue that Dolph Lundgren is the one who steals the show just in terms of how powerful his character arc is in this movie. And of course, I can't really explain what I'm talking about without spoiling the ending of this, but I'll get to that later. Just hold your horses. A lot of the way this movie is structured reminds me a lot of Rocky 2. And I say that as a good thing. I know a lot of other people might think that that's a bad thing, but with Rocky 2, it was, in my experience anyway, not so much about that big fight. It wasn't so much about getting Rocky and Apollo back in the ring for their rematch. For me, Rocky 2 was just more about, this is the next chapter in the life of this man, Rocky, and what he's going through and how he overcomes whatever obstacles are in his way. You know, he's got his wife, he has his kid in Rocky 2 and all that. Again, a soap opera with boxing. So Rocky 2 was the meaty, more soap opera-y chapter, whereas Rocky 1 was more of a boxing chapter. And the same, absolutely the same can be said here. Creed 1, which I find far superior to Creed 2, but that's neither here nor there. Creed 1 was much more of a boxing movie. It was about the boxing. Creed 2 is more of the soap opera side of things, where it's, okay, Adonis is heavyweight champ now. What's his home life going to be like? He's got Bianca. She's been his girlfriend for years. What is he going to, brother, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Does he put a ring on it? What's going to happen? Are they going to start a family? That all gets addressed here. But of course, there is still some really great boxing. There are 3 very big fights in Creed 2, which I like. They spread them out, which is nice. You have one right at the beginning, right in the middle, and right at the end. that's how you do it. That's a great way to sprinkle the boxing into this more soap opera-y chapter in the life of Adonis Creed. That's why I feel like this review, personally coming from me, is going to be very specific to me, because that is a very specific Andrew thing that I love about the Rocky franchise, that it is a giant soap opera that just keeps tracking the life of one man from pretty much start to finish. And sometimes there's more boxing and sometimes there's more home life, and that's okay, because the home life is just as interesting, arguably even more interesting than the boxing. To me, it's like you got the movie Forrest Gump, where we see Forrest Gump, he grows up and whatever, and he gets older and he becomes an adult and he learns things or whatever, and it's all compacted into that nice 2.5 hour movie. What I love about the Rocky franchise is it's that story of a man and his life, but it's spread out over a shit ton of movies, and in that way we really get to feel the passing of the years. We really get to feel the passage of time, the growth, and by the end of it, the characters in the film are as nostalgic for themselves as we are. And I'm a very nostalgic dude, so when Rocky starts walking down his old street and being like, hey, remember over there in the corner when there used to get a really good sandwich at that store there? I get nostalgic too. I'm like, yeah, I do remember in Rocky 1 when you got a really good sandwich from that store there. That's great. And Creed 2 is more focused on things like that. It's more focused on the small details, on the home life, on reflecting on the past and the future. And those are the little chunks that I love just as much as the boxing. So if you're into that, you're going to have a good time. Now, I've said I preferred Creed 1, and that goes without saying. Creed 1 was masterfully done, man. Creed 1 was just off the charts. And with Ryan Coogler not back directing, the new guy did a great job directing too, but with Ryan Coogler not back, I could already tell this was going to be a little bit of a step down, but not in a horrible way. And that's exactly what happened. It was a little bit of a step down, but not in a horrible way. I wasn't super emotional and crying by the end of it like I was in Creed 1, but I was very satisfied with the emotion that the ending brought. And that's going to bring me to the conclusion that I mentioned earlier involving Ivan Drago. After losing to Rocky in Rocky 4, Ivan Drago was humiliated amongst his fellow Russians, and life was never the same for him again. So we get a lot of that in this film, and we see just what happened to this man after Rocky took him down. Now he's an old man. He's got a son who is just a massive rhinoceros of a man, and he wants his son to do what he couldn't do. And you get a whole lot of sense of, like, when you see, those really legit scary parents who take their kids to Little League and then go overboard, and you can tell they're really living vicariously through that kid. That kid just wants to swing a baseball bat, and meanwhile the parent is like, if you don't win, you're fucking out of the house. Like, it's that kind of thing. You get that sense with Ivan Drago and his son Victor. But there are some beautiful turns in that story, and there are some beautiful beats to both of those characters' arcs that frankly puts to shame the arcs that Adonis and Rocky have in this movie, as far as I'm concerned. And in the final fight between Adonis and Victor, it looked like it was going to end in a way that I felt was going to be underwhelming. I was sitting there and I was like, ooh, I really hope they end it like this. Because this ending X, is something that A, they haven't done before in a Rocky movie, and B, would be very poetic considering what these characters have been through. And it started to look like I was going to be wrong. I was like, nah, ending X is not going to happen, and I was really bummed out. I was like, man, they missed out on a big opportunity here. But then ending X happened all of a sudden, and I was so thrilled because of what it meant for the saga in general, what it meant for the characters. The way that final fight was finished is absolutely beautiful. And by the end of it, you're just in that little ball of wonderful emotion that a Rocky movie always manages to put you in every single goddamn time. Seriously, Sylvester Stallone, I only have so many tears in this body. Stop getting them out of me. That's enough. That's not really enough. If you make Creed 3, I'm totally on board. And without giving anything away, if you're a longtime fan of the Rocky franchise, I'm not going to promise this, but you might see some characters that you probably never expected to see again. Whatever you're thinking, it's probably right. So those are my thoughts on Creed 2. Was it exciting? Yes. Was it as good as Creed 1? No, it was not. But I feel like that's kind of poetic because, hey, Rocky 2, same thing. It was a nice little slice of the man's life, less about boxing, not as good as the first one, but still, you're going to have a good time. So if they set out to make Creed 2 rhyme with Rocky 2, mission accomplished, baby. So thank you so much for tuning in to Thumb Together. I'm Andrew Fantasia. I will see you here next time, and until then, adios.